What if I told you that something sitting in your fruit bowl right now, something sweet, something you probably ate as a child, could be quietly protecting one of the most delicate organs in your entire body while you sleep tonight? We spend billions of dollars a year on eye creams, supplements, and treatments to protect our vision as we age. But what if the real answer isn't in a bottle, it's in nature? Your eyes are extraordinary. They contain some of the most metabolically active tissue in your body, powered by tiny blood vessels and delicate cells that are under constant assault from blue light, from oxidative stress, from the simple wear of time. And your body has a natural defense system for this. The question is, are you feeding it? Tonight I want to share with you a fruit, backed by real science, not folklore, that has been shown to support eye health in ways that might surprise you. It's not exotic, it's not expensive, and the best part? Eating it before bed may work with your body's natural repair cycles while you sleep. So let's talk about food as medicine and how the simplest choice at the simplest moment of your day could be one of the most powerful things you do for your eyes. Let me start with something that might surprise you. Your eyes are working harder while you sleep than you might ever imagine. We tend to think of sleep as a time of total shutdown, a pause button for the body. But for your eyes, nothing could be further from the truth. The moment you close your eyelids, an entirely different kind of activity begins, one that is quiet, invisible, and absolutely essential. Think about what your eyes endure over the course of a single day. They are bombarded with blue light from screens, phones, and overhead lighting. They are exposed to ultraviolet rays every time you step outside. They blink thousands of times. They focus and refocus constantly. And they process an almost unimaginable amount of visual information every single second. All of this activity generates something scientists call oxidative stress, essentially a kind of cellular wear and tear caused by unstable molecules known as free radicals. And nowhere in the body is this wear and tear more concentrated than in the retina, the light-sensitive tissue at the back of your eye. Here's something remarkable. The retina has one of the highest metabolic rates of any tissue in the entire human body. Pound for pound, it consumes more oxygen and generates more energy demand than almost any other organ, including muscle tissue during exercise. That means it also produces more oxidative byproducts that need to be cleared and repaired. And when does most of this repair work happen? While you sleep. During the night, your body shifts into what I like to call maintenance mode. Cellular repair pathways activate. Inflammation is dialed down. Antioxidant systems go to work, neutralizing the free radicals that accumulated throughout the day. In the eye specifically, structures called photoreceptors, the cells responsible for capturing light and translating it into vision, undergo a renewal process. Part of their outer segments are shed and rebuilt on a nightly cycle. This is not a passive process. It requires raw materials. It requires specific nutrients. It requires the right building blocks to be present in your bloodstream at the right time. This is where most people miss the connection entirely. We think about eye health in terms of glasses, screens, and eye drops. We rarely think about it in terms of what we ate for dinner or what we snacked on 2 hours before bed. But your retina doesn't care what time zone your habits are in. It cares whether the antioxidants, carotenoids, and micronutrients it needs are actually available when the repair window opens. Consider two of the most well-studied compounds for eye health, lutein and zeaxanthin. These are carotenoids that accumulate specifically in the macula, the central part of the retina responsible for sharp, detailed vision. They act like an internal pair of sunglasses, absorbing high-energy blue light before it can damage the delicate photoreceptor cells underneath. But here's the key. Your body cannot manufacture lutein and zeaxanthin on its own. They must come from food. And their levels in your blood rise and fall depending on when and what you eat. This means timing matters. If the overnight repair window is when your eyes are doing their heaviest lifting, then having these protective compounds circulating in your system as you fall asleep is not a coincidence you want to leave to chance. It is an opportunity you can deliberately create. I often tell people that the body is not asking for perfection. It is asking for consistency, and it is asking for the right inputs at the right moments. Your eyes are quietly running one of the most sophisticated repair operations in your entire body every single night, whether you are aware of it or not. The photoreceptors are rebuilding. The oxidative damage from the day's blue light and UV exposure is being addressed. Antioxidant systems are working overtime to protect tissue that, once damaged, does not always regenerate the way skin or muscle can. So the question becomes, are you supporting that process, or are you leaving it to work with whatever happens to be left over in your system from earlier in the day? Most of us have never even considered that the timing of a snack could influence something as protective and precise as retinal repair. But when you understand what is actually happening inside your eyes each night, the metabolic demand, the oxidative load, the narrow window for cellular renewal, it becomes clear that this is not a minor detail. It is a biological opportunity hiding in plain sight, one that depends entirely on what you choose to put into your body in the hours before you close your eyes for the night. Let's talk about what's actually happening at a cellular level when we say a fruit is good for your eyes, because this is where things get genuinely fascinating. Your retina is bathed in light every waking hour, and light, for all its necessity, is also a source of chemical stress. Blue light in particular carries high energy, and when it strikes the light-sensitive cells of your eye, it can trigger the formation of free radicals, unstable molecules that damage cell membranes, proteins, and even the DNA inside retinal cells over time. This is a slow, cumulative process, and it's one of the underlying mechanisms behind age-related vision decline. Now, here's where nature offers something remarkable. Certain fruits are extraordinarily dense in compounds called anthocyanins and flavonoids, the very pigments that give berries their deep blue, purple, and red coloring. Blueberries are one of the richest natural sources of these compounds, and what's striking is that anthocyanins don't just neutralize free radicals in a generic way. Research suggests they have a particular affinity for supporting the tiny blood vessels that nourish the retina, improving circulation to tissue that is otherwise incredibly difficult to reach with nutrients, given how protected and enclosed the eye is within the body. Think about the retina's environment for a moment. It sits behind a highly selective barrier, similar in concept to the blood-brain barrier, which controls what can and cannot pass from your bloodstream into this sensitive tissue. Not every antioxidant you consume actually makes it there. This is part of why the specific compounds in certain fruits matter so much. They're not just antioxidants in a general sense, they are antioxidants capable of reaching the exact tissue that needs protecting. Blueberries also contain a compound profile that has been studied for its potential role in reducing oxidative markers associated with macular degeneration, one of the leading causes of vision loss in older adults. The macula, remember, is the part of the retina responsible for your sharpest central vision, the vision you use to read, to recognize faces, to see fine detail. It is metabolically demanding tissue, and it is particularly vulnerable to the kind of light-induced oxidative damage we discussed earlier. But blueberries are just one example of a broader principle at work. Fruits with deep, vibrant pigmentation, whether that's the blue-purple of blueberries, the orange-red of goji berries, or the rich tones found in certain grapes, tend to be signaling something important through their color. In nature, pigment is often a marker of protective phytochemical content. Plants develop these pigments as their own defense mechanism against UV damage and environmental stress. And when we consume them, we are essentially borrowing that same protective chemistry for our own tissues. Goji berries in particular deserve attention here because they contain zeaxanthin, one of the two primary carotenoids that concentrate directly in the macula. Most fruits that are rich in antioxidants offer general, body-wide protection, but very few deliver a carotenoid that the eye actively seeks out and stores in high concentration. This is a critical distinction. Zeaxanthin isn't just floating around your bloodstream hoping to be useful somewhere. It is preferentially absorbed and retained by macular tissue, specifically because the eye recognizes its protective value against blue light. What excites me most as someone who studies the intersection of food and disease prevention is that these mechanisms aren't theoretical. They are observable. Researchers have used tools like macular pigment optical density testing to actually measure how dietary intake of these compounds correlates with physical, measurable changes in eye tissue. This isn't a vague wellness claim. It's biology that can be tracked, quantified, and studied over time in real human subjects. And this is why fruit specifically deserves more attention in conversations about eye health than it typically receives. We hear constantly about carrots and vitamin A, which is valid, but the deeper, more targeted protection against oxidative and light-induced damage often comes from these lesser discussed pigmented fruits. They work through multiple pathways simultaneously, scavenging free radicals directly, supporting healthy blood flow to deliver nutrients and oxygen efficiently, and in some cases, directly integrating into the structure of the eye itself as protective pigment. What makes this even more compelling is how accessible this protection is. We're not talking about rare compounds locked away in expensive supplements or specialized treatments. We're talking about fruit, the kind you can find in almost any grocery store in any season at a price point almost anyone can afford. The barrier to entry for this kind of protection isn't financial or logistical. It's simply awareness. Most people have never connected the dots between the color of the fruit on their plate and the protective chemistry happening deep inside their retina every single day. Let's think about timing for a moment, because timing is something we almost never discuss when it comes to nutrition and eye health. Yet it may be one of the most overlooked variables in the entire equation. We obsess over what to eat. We rarely stop to ask when to eat it in relation to what our bodies are actually doing at that moment. And when it comes to your eyes, timing may matter more than almost any other tissue in your body. Here's why. The human body operates on what scientists call a circadian rhythm, an internal biological clock that governs everything from hormone release to cellular repair to metabolic activity. This clock doesn't just affect when you feel sleepy or alert, it governs distinct phases of repair and regeneration throughout your organs, and the eye is no exception. In fact, research into ocular biology has revealed that retinal cells follow their own localized circadian patterns, somewhat independent of the master clock in your brain, meaning the eye essentially has its own internal schedule for when it ramps up repair activity and when it winds down. During the hours of sleep, retinal cells shift into a state of heightened renewal. This is when the outer segments of photoreceptor cells, the parts responsible for actually capturing light, are shed and rebuilt in a nightly cycle that has been documented in scientific literature for decades. This shedding and rebuilding process is metabolically expensive. It requires antioxidants to manage the oxidative byproducts of the process, and it requires specific micronutrients to serve as building blocks. If those nutrients are not present in the bloodstream at the time this rebuilding is happening, the process either slows down or has to draw from whatever reserves the body has stored elsewhere. This is precisely why the concept of eating a protective fruit before bed carries more weight than eating that same fruit earlier in the day. If you consume a fruit rich in anthocyanins, zeaxanthin, or lutein at breakfast, by the time your retina enters its overnight repair phase many hours later, much of that nutrient may have already been metabolized, distributed elsewhere, or cleared from your bloodstream. But if you consume it in the evening, closer to when this repair window actually opens, you are essentially delivering the raw materials right when the construction crew shows up to work. I find this concept, nutrient timing in relation to circadian repair cycles, to be one of the more underappreciated frontiers in nutritional science. We have spent so much energy identifying which nutrients are beneficial and comparatively little energy studying when those nutrients are most effectively utilized by specific tissues. Yet your liver, your muscles, your skin, and your eyes all operate on different repair schedules throughout a 24-hour period. A nutrient that arrives at the wrong time isn't wasted entirely, but it may not be used with the same efficiency as one that arrives precisely when a tissue is primed to absorb and utilize it. There's another layer to this as well, one that involves blood sugar and inflammation. Large meals or sugar-heavy snacks late at night can trigger inflammatory responses and blood sugar spikes that actually work against the repair processes happening in the eye and elsewhere in the body. This is part of why the specific choice of fruit matters so much. A fruit that is naturally rich in fiber and antioxidants, consumed in a reasonable portion, tends to support steady blood sugar rather than spike it, allowing the antioxidant compounds to do their protective work without the competing burden of an inflammatory response working against them at the same time. Sleep itself also plays a role in this timing relationship. During deep sleep stages, blood flow patterns shift throughout the body, and increased circulation to certain tissues, including the eyes, has been observed during specific sleep phases. If protective nutrients are circulating in the bloodstream during these windows of increased blood flow, the delivery of those nutrients to retinal tissue may be more efficient than if those same nutrients were consumed and processed many hours earlier before this circulatory shift even begins. What I find most compelling about this entire concept is how it reframes something as simple as an evening snack. We tend to think of a bedtime snack purely in terms of hunger management or comfort. But when you understand the biological reality of what's happening in your eyes overnight, the cellular shedding, the rebuilding, the oxidative stress management, the circadian-driven repair windows, an evening snack becomes something far more strategic. It becomes an opportunity to align a simple, everyday habit with a biological process that is happening whether you're aware of it or not, and whether you're feeding it properly or leaving it to work with whatever nutrients happen to still be circulating from earlier in the day. Let me shift gears for a moment and talk about something I think about constantly in my work: the gap between what we know intellectually and what we actually do in practice. We live in an age of extraordinary medical innovation. We have laser treatments for vision correction. We have injectable therapies for macular degeneration. We have supplements engineered in laboratories to deliver precise doses of specific compounds. And yet, in the middle of all this technological sophistication, one of the most powerful tools for protecting long-term eye health remains something as simple and unglamorous as what you choose to eat, consistently over years and decades. This is a point I return to again and again because I think we have a cultural tendency to associate health solutions with complexity. If something is going to meaningfully protect an organ as delicate and important as the eye, surely it needs to be sophisticated, expensive, clinically administered. But the research tells a different story. Some of the most compelling evidence in eye health research doesn't come from breakthrough pharmaceuticals. It comes from long-term dietary studies, tracking populations over years, sometimes decades, and observing how consistent nutritional patterns correlate with measurable differences in eye disease risk. Consider the age-related eye disease studies, large-scale research efforts that have tracked thousands of participants over extended periods of time. These studies didn't reveal that some exotic, rare compound was the key to protecting vision. They pointed toward things like lutein, zeaxanthin, vitamin C, vitamin E, and zinc, nutrients found abundantly in ordinary fruits and vegetables, the kind available in any grocery store, in any season, at a price point accessible to nearly everyone. The power wasn't in rarity. The power was in consistency. This is a crucial distinction because consistency is fundamentally different from intensity. We often approach health with a mindset of intensity, a juice cleanse, a dramatic diet change, a burst of motivation that fades within weeks. But your eyes don't respond to intensity. They respond to years of steady exposure to protective compounds, small deposits made repeatedly over time, much like how the macular pigment I mentioned earlier accumulates gradually in retinal tissue through sustained dietary intake, not through a single large dose. I often use the analogy of compound interest when explaining this concept, because it maps almost perfectly onto how nutritional protection works for the eyes. A single healthy meal will not meaningfully change your risk of macular degeneration 10 years from now, but a single healthy meal, repeated most days, for 10 years, changes the entire trajectory. The compounds accumulate, the protective pigment density in the macula builds, the oxidative damage that would have occurred without that consistent nutritional support simply doesn't happen, or happens at a dramatically reduced rate. This is not dramatic, visible change happening overnight. It is quiet, cumulative protection happening in the background of an otherwise ordinary life. This is precisely why something as small as choosing a specific fruit before bed matters so much more than it might initially seem. It's not about that single snack on that single night. It's about what happens when that snack becomes a repeated pattern, night after night, month after month, year after year. The retina doesn't care about a single instance of good nutrition. It cares about pattern, about consistency, about whether protective compounds are reliably present in the bloodstream during repair windows across a sustained period of time. I think this reframing matters because it removes a psychological barrier that often prevents people from taking dietary advice seriously. When people hear that a fruit can support eye health, there's sometimes an unspoken skepticism. How could something so simple, so inexpensive, so unremarkable actually compete with modern medical technology? But this isn't a competition between simple food and sophisticated medicine. It's a recognition that prevention and treatment operate on entirely different timelines and through entirely different mechanisms. Medicine intervenes after damage has occurred. Nutrition, practiced consistently over time, works to prevent that damage from accumulating in the first place. What I find most hopeful about this entire framework is how accessible it makes eye health for nearly everyone, regardless of income, geography, or access to specialized medical care. You don't need a prescription to eat a handful of blueberries before bed. You don't need insurance approval to choose goji berries as an evening snack instead of something processed and nutrient poor. This is a form of protection that exists entirely within your own daily choices, available to you tonight, tomorrow night, and every night after that, simply by understanding what your body is doing while you sleep and choosing to support that process with something as ordinary and as powerful as fruit. So here's what I want you to take away from tonight. Your eyes are not passive organs simply waiting to age and decline. They are active, dynamic tissue running repair cycles every single night, whether you're aware of it or not. And you have far more influence over that process than you may have ever realized. It isn't about expensive treatments or complicated regimens. It's about something as simple as what you choose to eat and when you choose to eat it. Every night before bed is an opportunity, a small, quiet moment where you can either support your eye's natural repair process or leave it to work with whatever happens to be left over. That choice belongs entirely to you, and it's available starting tonight. I hope this gives you a new way of thinking about food, about timing, and about the quiet power of consistency. Your vision is worth protecting, and sometimes the most powerful protection comes from the simplest places. If this changed the way you think about eye health, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below and let me know what you're adding to your evening routine. And if you want more science-backed insights like this, make sure to subscribe so you never miss what's next.